Welcome back to the Third Brain Channel. Sit back, relax for a few minutes. Let's make the world a better place, one video at a time. You know how sometimes it's like you're bombarded with all this advice about huge life changes.
Right.
Like you got to overhaul everything.
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving into something different. We're looking at the power of tiny changes.
It really is fascinating how we're always told we need these massive transformations. But I think the real magic often lies in those subtle, consistent shifts we make, over time.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. We're going to be drawing insights from the book, The Power of Tiny Changes.
Cool.
And it kind of challenges us to, like, rethink our approach to personal growth. It suggests that lasting change, real change, it comes from these small, consistent actions, focusing on one thing at a time.
Yeah, the book boils this whole concept down to two fundamental rules, and they are just do something every day and just change one thing at a time.
Okay, those do sound simple,
They do.
but I'm guessing they pack a punch.
Oh, they do.
So let's break down that first rule. Just do something every day.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on why consistency trumps intensity when it comes to creating lasting change?
Okay, think of it this way, like building a house. You wouldn't expect to build a whole house in one day, would you?
No way.
It's that steady brick by brick progress that eventually leads to a solid foundation.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same way with personal growth. It's that daily commitment, even in small doses, that really fosters momentum and builds that solid framework for change.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. Right?
Exactly.
But, okay, I'm curious, isn't there a risk, though, of falling into a rut with this approach? How do we make sure that those small actions actually lead to meaningful change?
Well, that's where the second rule comes in. Just change one thing at a time. Our brains, they're wired to resist drastic change. Trying to overhaul everything at once is like a recipe for overwhelm and burnout. Yeah. But if we can laser focus on just one area, we can dedicate all our energy to mastering that specific change. Makes it much more likely to stick.
Yeah, it's almost like choosing your battles wisely. You got to make sure you're fully equipped to win each one before moving on to the next.
Yeah, I like that.
So speaking of winning battles, I know the author's personal fitness transformation is a really compelling example of these rules in action.
It is, yeah.
Can you share that story with us?
Absolutely. So for years, the author, he struggled with his fitness. He bounced around between all these different intense workout programs, but they all kind of fizzled out eventually.
I feel like we've all been there.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have. But when he applied these principles, he started with something super simple, like consistently cooking breakfast every day. And over 5 years, something really interesting happened. He gradually gained around 20 pounds of muscle and transformed his physique without crazy extreme measures.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
And it makes you think what small change could I implement today that could have a ripple effect in my own life?
Right.
But how do these rules, they seem so simple, translate to other areas like creative pursuits?
Right.
Or even relationships?
Okay, let's take writing a novel.
Okay.
Daunting task, right?
Very daunting.
I mean, the sheer magnitude of that project, it can be paralyzing for so many aspiring writers. But what if, instead of fixating on the whole book, you committed to writing just 100 words every day?
100 words. That feels doable, even on the busiest of days.
Yeah.
It's like shifting the focus from overwhelming to actually empowering.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes this point at this stage. It's not about perfect prose or worrying about plot holes. It's solely about cultivating that habit of writing, laying those bricks one at a time.
So it's about mastering that small step before you even think about the bigger picture.
Precisely. And this principle, it's beautiful because it applies to other areas as well. Take healthy eating. Instead of doing a complete dietary overhaul, what if you just focused on swapping one unhealthy meal per day with a homemade one?
Yeah, that's a much smaller step.
Right.
Or say you're trying to boost your productivity, you could try incorporating the Pomodoro technique for just one task each day.
Yeah.
And then once you master that, you could gradually expand from there.
Exactly. It's about creating a foundation of consistency
Right.
and then strategically building on it. Even in relationships, this approach is really powerful. Instead of trying to fix every issue all at once, you could focus on just practicing active listening for 15 minutes each day.
Wow. Yeah, that one small change could have a profound impact on communication and understanding.
Couldn't it?
It's amazing how adaptable these rules are. They can be applied to so many different aspects of life.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of them. They're so simple and versatile. Whether you're learning to code, improving your finances, even decluttering your home, these principles offer a framework for creating lasting change. And speaking of decluttering, this whole approach, it kind of extends beyond just our physical spaces.
Oh, interesting. So you mean like decluttering our minds as well.
Yeah.
How do these tiny changes apply to something like as intangible as like mental clutter?
Well, think about it. We often feel overwhelmed, right? And it's because our minds are cluttered with thoughts, commitments, that never-ending to-do
It's
list.
like having too many tabs open in our brains.
Exactly. And just like with physical clutter, we can apply those same rules. So instead of trying to clear your entire mental to-do list all at once, what if you focused on simplifying one area at a time?
Okay, so maybe you spend like a week decluttering your morning routine, and then the next week you tackle that overflowing inbox.
Precisely. It's all about breaking down those mental mountains into those manageable molehills. And this kind of brings us to like a crucial point. It's the shift in mindset that this approach encourages. It's not about striving for this elusive ideal of perfection.
Which is so refreshing.
It
It
is.
takes the pressure off, right?
Mm.
It's not about these radical overnight transformations. It's about embracing those small, sustainable steps that over time can lead to real lasting change.
Right. It's about embracing the idea of just enough progress each day, consistency over intensity.
And you know what I like about this idea of just enough?
Yeah.
It encourages us to be more mindful and intentional in our actions.
Absolutely. When you're focused on making just one small change each day, you're not just going through the motions. You're actively choosing to make that change. And that sense of agency, it can be so motivating.
Yes, like taking back the reins of your life, one tiny change at a time.
Exactly. And as you start to see the positive impact of those small changes,
Yeah.
it reinforces that belief that you can make a difference. It boosts your self-efficacy.
It creates that positive feedback loop, right? Small wins leading to greater confidence, which then fuels further action.
Precisely. And the beauty of this whole approach is that it applies to like virtually any area of your life, your health, relationships, career, finances, personal growth. If you can break it down into a tiny change that you can commit to doing each day, you can start making progress.
It's about choosing those small, consistent actions over that overwhelming feeling of having to do it all and do it now.
Right. And that's where this approach is so transformative, I think. It's about giving yourself permission to slow down, to focus, and make those small, consistent changes that over time can lead to extraordinary results.
It seems paradoxical, but by slowing down, by focusing on less, we can actually achieve more.
And because we're working with the natural rhythms of our brains and our bodies, we're not forcing change, we're cultivating it.
It's like planting a seed and nurturing it patiently instead of trying to force it to grow overnight.
That's such a beautiful analogy. And it's a powerful reminder that lasting change takes time, it takes patience, and it takes consistent effort.
So for our listeners out there who are ready to embrace this power of tiny changes, where do they begin? What's that first step they can take?
The most important thing is to just start. Don't get bogged down in overthinking or planning. Just pick one tiny change that you can commit to doing every day.
It could be something as simple as like drinking an extra glass of water each day or spending 5 minutes decluttering your desk.
Exactly. The key is to make it so small and so easy that you can't say no, and then once that becomes a habit, you can gradually increase the intensity or add another small change.
Yeah, and don't forget to celebrate those small wins along the way. Every step forward, no matter how tiny, is a victory.
Absolutely. As you start to see those small wins accumulate, you'll be amazed at how far you can go.
It's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
And every single step, no matter how small, brings you closer to your destination.
It's all about taking action consistently and trusting the process.
And believing in the power of tiny changes to create a life that you truly love.
It's so inspiring to think about what we can achieve when we shift our focus from those like massive, overwhelming goals to those tiny, manageable actions.
It's about reclaiming our power and agency, one small step at a time.
And it's not about denying the importance of big dreams and aspirations. It's about understanding that the path to those dreams is paved with those tiny, consistent steps.
Yeah, it's like building a mosaic.
Ooh.
Each tiny piece might seem insignificant on its own, but when they all come together, they create this like stunning work of art.
I love that analogy. It's a good reminder that even on those days where we feel like we haven't accomplished much,
Right.
those tiny actions are still contributing to the bigger picture.
Yeah, they're still moving us forward, even if it's just an inch at a time.
Such an important message, especially in a world that glorifies instant gratification and overnight success.
It really is. It's about embracing the journey, not just the destination. It's about finding joy in the process of like growth and transformation.
Yeah, and trusting that those tiny changes, when done consistently, can lead to some really extraordinary results.
Absolutely. And that brings us to like a thought-provoking question that was kind of inspired by the book, but goes a bit beyond what was explicitly stated.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the question?
Okay, what if instead of aiming for perfection, you embrace the idea of just enough progress each day? Where could that lead you?
Just enough progress. I like that. It takes the pressure off having to do everything perfectly, right? It
Yeah,
allows us to just focus on like simply showing up and doing something, even if it's just a small something.
exactly. Consistency over intensity, progress over perfection.
Yeah, that's a powerful message to leave our listeners with. So to wrap things up, if there's one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember from this deep dive, what would it be?
Remember that lasting change is a marathon, not a sprint. Embrace the power of tiny changes. Focus on one thing at a time and trust that those small, consistent actions can lead you to extraordinary places.
Beautifully said. And remember, every journey begins with a single step. So what's that one tiny change you can make today? Think about it, commit to it, and start taking those small steps toward the life you want to create. Until next time, keep diving deep.